Vela stood at the observation deck of the spaceship Starlight Wanderer, all four of her arms wrapped tightly around herself. Her bright blue skin glowed slightly in the dim light as she watched the small human shuttle approach. The Myraxian female had studied humans for months to prepare for this mission, but now that the moment was here, her stomach felt like it was filled with jumping fish. "Stop moving so much," her boss, Captain Zrel, said with a frown. "We picked you as our representative because you understand languages and how different people think." Vela nodded, using two hands to fix her formal sash while her other two hands smoothed her uniform. "I know, Captain. I've learned a lot about humans, but the way they look at beauty makes me worried." What she didn't tell him was that humans scared her, not because they might hurt her, but because they were so beautiful by galaxy standards. Their faces matched on both sides. They had only two arms that looked exactly the same. Their skin was smooth without the glowing spots that showed her people came from the deep oceans. The big group of space travelers called the Galactic Cooperative rated humans as one of the most attractive thinking species, but Myraxians like Vela were seen as strange creatures. 4 arms, blue skin with glowing patterns, big bug-like eyes, and the breathing slits on their necks that let them live underwater. These things made them good at talking to many different aliens, but also made others think they looked weird. As the human ship connected to theirs, Vela breathed deeply through both her lungs and neck gills, a way her people calmed down before big meetings. The door opened with a loud hiss, and a human man walked through. He was tall with wide shoulders, light brown hair, and a kind smile that made Vela feel nervous right away. This was Joe Morgan, Earth's chosen person for the Culture Exchange program. "Welcome to the Starlight Wanderer," Captain Zrel said formally. "I am Captain Zrel, and this is Cultural Representative Vela, who will be your main contact while you stay with us." Joe's eyes got brighter with real interest when he looked at Vela. "It's great to meet you both," he said, holding out his hand. In the human greeting she had practiced, she slowly reached out her top right hand, trying not to pull back when his warm fingers wrapped around hers. His skin felt so different, smooth and warm without the slight wetness that all her people had. "We are happy to meet you too," she said, her voice changed by a machine that turned her underwater-like sounds into clear English. "I will show you around our ship and help you get ready for your visit to my home planet Myrax soon." Joe smiled again, and Vela noticed the small lines near his eyes. "I've read so much about your people. Your underwater cities sound amazing. I study ocean life on Earth, so this is like a perfect job for me." His honest excitement surprised Vela. She had expected him to be polite on the outside but disgusted on the inside. She didn't expect him to sound truly interested. "Well," she said, finding her professional voice again, "we have many things to show you. Should we start the tour?" As she led Joe through the ship's hallways, Vela could feel everyone staring at them. This wasn't unusual. Humans were still new to the cooperative, but she noticed how many looks showed admiration for the human and pity for her. She had seen this before on other missions. Everyone assumed she must feel ugly next to such an attractive species. What surprised her was how Joe didn't seem to notice these looks, how he paid full attention to her explanations, how his questions showed he knew more about her people than what was in the basic information packet. "Is it true that your people make poetry underwater using glowing light patterns?" he asked as they entered the ship's garden room. Vela stopped walking, truly surprised. "Yes, that's right. We call it light verse. Patterns we make by controlling our body lights that can only be seen properly from certain angles underwater. It's our most respected art form." "That sounds wonderful," Joe said, his eyes showing real interest. "I'd really like to see that someday, even if I would need help understanding it." "Maybe you will," Vela answered, feeling her professional wall crack a little. "It's part of the plan for when you visit our home planet." As they kept walking around the ship, Vela found herself feeling more comfortable with Joe. His questions were smart. His comments showed he understood things quickly. By the time they reached the dining room for the welcome party, she had almost forgotten to worry about how she looked. Almost. Their first day together continued with the formal dinner. Other species from across the galaxy sat at long tables, eating food specially prepared to suit their different bodies. Vela watched nervously as Joe was served his first non-Earth meal. "This smells interesting," he said, looking at the purple food on his plate. Instead of looking disgusted, he seemed curious. He took a bite and his eyes widened. "It's delicious. What is it?" "Ocean fruit from my home planet," Vela explained, surprised by his reaction. "Most non-water species find it too strong." Joe took another bite. "It reminds me of seafood on Earth, but sweeter. I like trying new things." While they ate, Joe asked her about her family, her training, and her previous work trips. Not once did he stare at her forearms or the way her skin glowed brighter when she got excited about a topic. He just listened, nodded, and asked more questions. "What made you want to work with aliens?" she finally asked him, curious about his unusual openness. Joe thought for a moment. "On Earth we have thousands of different sea creatures. Some look strange to us, with tentacles or huge eyes or bodies that light up in the dark, but each one is perfectly made for its world. I learned early that different doesn't mean bad or ugly. It means adapted, perfect for where you belong." He smiled at her. "I see space species the same way." Vela felt her skin glow brighter with surprise. No one had ever explained it that way before. As the dinner ended, Captain Zrel approached them. "Officer Morgan, we've prepared quarters for you near the main observation area. Vela will show you the way and continue your orientation tomorrow." "Thank you for your hospitality," Joe said politely. "I'm looking forward to learning more." As Vela led him toward his room, she found herself looking at him with new eyes. Maybe this human was different from what she expected. Maybe this mission wouldn't be as difficult as she had feared. When they reached his door, Joe turned to her. "Thank you for today, Vela. I know it must be strange having to explain your whole culture to someone new." "It's my job," she said automatically. "Still, you do it well," he replied. "I hope I can learn to see your world the way you do." As he disappeared into his room, Vela stood there for a moment, all four hands clasped together in thought. For the first time since meeting a human, she felt something unexpected replacing her fear and worry. Hope. 3 weeks passed quickly. Vela now felt more relaxed around Joe. Their daily lessons about each other's cultures had turned into real conversations. She looked forward to their time together. Today, they sat in the ship's fun room, looking at pictures of Earth art that Joe had brought. "Do humans still value painted pictures even though you have cameras and computers?" Vela asked, looking at images of old Earth paintings on Joe's screen. "Yes, we do." Joe nodded with excitement. "There's something special about how another person sees you that a camera can't capture. It's not just how you look, but who you are inside." Vela tilted her head, which meant she was curious. "That's like our light verse too. We don't just make pretty patterns, we show the true nature of what we're describing." Joe gave her that warm smile she now knew well. Maybe our people aren't so different after all. Just then, 2 silver-skinned aliens walked into the room. These were Arcturians, known all over the galaxy for their beauty and grace, and for looking down on species they thought were less advanced. "Ah, the human visitor," said the taller one, nodding slightly. "Your people continue to impress everyone with how quickly you've advanced." "I'm just a regular officer, not an ambassador," Joe said in a friendly way. "But thank you." The Arcturian then turned to look at Vela, and his face changed slightly. "And cultural worker Vela, how lucky for you to be chosen to work with the human program." Vela knew exactly what he meant, and her skin lights flashed in a pattern that showed embarrassment and stress. The Arcturian had said out loud what many thought, that working with a beautiful human would only make her look worse by comparison. "I am very lucky," she said stiffly. "Officer Morgan is an excellent representative of Earth." The Arcturians looked at each other in a way that said much without words, then politely excused themselves. After they left, an awkward silence filled the room. "I'm sorry about that conversation," Vela finally said. "Arcturians can be difficult." Joe's forehead wrinkled. "You don't need to say sorry. But what exactly happened? I feel like I missed something." Vela hesitated. How could she explain the complicated beauty rankings in the cooperative without making both of them uncomfortable? It's nothing important, she said, trying to change the subject. Let's continue talking about art. But Jo was smarter than she thought. It wasn't nothing. Your skin lights changed patterns. I've been studying what that means. Those showed you were stressed, right? Vela sighed, all four of her hands moving in a way that showed she gave up. You noticed well. Yes, they were. Was it something I did? Did I break some rule I don't know about? No, Vela said quickly. If anything, it was about me. Jo looked confused, and Vela realized she needed to explain at least part of what happened. In the cooperative, there are beauty standards, she began awkwardly. Some species are seen as more attractive than others. Humans rank very high. My people do not. Joe's face showed he suddenly understood, then quickly showed anger. Wait, they were judging you? Based on how you look? It's not exactly judging in the way humans might think of it, Vela tried to explain. More like everyone knows their place in how attractive different species are. It doesn't affect our official jobs or rights. But it affects how people treat you, Joe said, his voice quiet but strong. That's not right. Vela felt touched by his anger on her behalf, but also embarrassed. It's just how things are, I'm used to it. Joe shook his head. On Earth, we learned the hard way that judging people by how they look leads to bad places. We still have problems with it, but at least we know it's wrong. That's a good human quality, Vela said, wanting to talk about something else. Now you were telling me about old Earth paintings. Joe let her change the topic, but Vela could tell the conversation had affected him. What she couldn't understand was why he would care so much about how others saw her. That night, in her private room, Vela stood in front of her mirror, really looking at herself. 4 arms with slightly webbed fingers. Blue skin with glowing patterns that changed with her feelings. Large bug-like eyes that could see things humans couldn't. Breathing slits on her neck that moved slightly as she breathed. These things made her a Myraxian, and by cooperative standards made her ugly. Yet Joe hadn't seemed disgusted by her. If anything, he'd seemed interested and respectful. Was it just his training? Was he just being extra nice because it was his job? Or could it be that humans, that Joe, saw beauty in a different way? The thought made her feel both happy and scared, opening up ideas Vela wasn't sure she was ready to think about. The next day, Joe and Vela met in the ship's garden area for their scheduled cultural lesson. Today they were supposed to talk about family structures, but Vela could tell Joe had something else on his mind. I couldn't stop thinking about our conversation yesterday, he said, as they sat on a bench surrounded by plants from 50 different worlds. Vela's skin lights flickered, with worry. It's really not important. It is important, Joe interrupted gently. I went back to my room and looked up the cooperative's beauty standards in the database. I had no idea such an official system existed. Vela looked down at her 4 hands. Most species don't talk about it directly, it's just understood. That's even worse, Joe said. Look, on Earth we have a long, ugly history of judging people by how they look. By their skin color, body shape, facial features. It caused terrible suffering. We've spent centuries trying to move past it. The cooperative isn't cruel about it, Vela explained. No one is denied jobs or rights because of appearance. It's just a social thing. Social things can hurt the most, Joe said softly. Can I ask you something personal? Vela's skin glowed with nervousness, but she nodded. Do you think you're ugly? Joe asked directly. The question hit Vela like cold water. No one had ever asked her that before. She started to give the diplomatic answer, then stopped herself. By cooperative standards? Yes, she admitted. Our 4 arms, our skin patterns, our eyes, they don't match what most species find attractive. But by your own standards? By Myraxian standards? Vela thought about it. Among my own people, I'm considered normal. Maybe even somewhat attractive. Our patterns are important to us, and mine are considered well-balanced. Joe smiled. That's what I thought. Beauty isn't universal, it's cultural. What the Arcturians think doesn't matter. What humans think doesn't matter. What matters is how you see yourself. Vela's skin flashed with complex emotions. That's a nice idea, but hard to practice when you live in a mixed-species society. I know, Joe said, reaching out slowly to touch one of her hands. But maybe we can start by having one friend who sees you through your own culture's eyes, not through some made-up universal standard. His hand felt warm against hers. Vela found herself looking at him, really looking at him. His strange, smooth skin, his two arms that should have seemed too few but somehow didn't, his small eyes that only saw a fraction of the colors and depths her eyes could see. By Myraxian standards, humans were the strange-looking ones, yet she had never thought of him as ugly. I would like that, she said finally, her skin glowing, with a new pattern, one that showed hope mixed with something else, something she wasn't ready to name yet. 2 months after Joe arrived, the spaceship Starlight Wanderer reached Myrax, Vela's home planet. It was a beautiful world with huge oceans and small groups of islands. Joe had been on the planet for 3 days now, learning about Myraxian culture up close. Today was a big event, his first trip underwater to see a lightverse show. Vela waited nervously at a floating platform near New Azure, one of her people's biggest cities. She wore traditional Myraxian clothes, a simple wrap that left her arms free and her neck gills uncovered. Special bright patterns were painted on her skin to make her natural glow even prettier. Back on her home planet, surrounded by her own people, Vela felt more confident than she had on the ship. Here, having 4 arms and blue skin was normal. Here she could move the way her body was meant to move. She saw Joe walking toward her with another Myraxian who was helping him. He wore a special swimsuit the ship's engineers had made for him, with a clear helmet that would let him breathe and talk underwater. "Officer Morgan," she said formally, knowing other Myraxians were watching. Humans rarely visited Myrax. "Cultural Representative Vela," he replied just as formally, but his eyes crinkled with that friendly smile she knew well. "I've been looking forward to this all week." "The underwater breathing system has been tested many times," she told him. "You'll be completely safe." "I trust your technology," Joe said simply. "And I trust you." His words touched her heart in a way she hadn't expected. Vela felt her skin lights shift to show pleasure, something she was glad Joe probably couldn't understand yet. "Then let's go," she said, using 2 hands to point toward the water while her other 2 fixed the talking device that would let them speak underwater. Going into the ocean was a moment Vela had both wanted and feared. Underwater was where her people were most at home, most beautiful in their movements. But it was also where her alien nature would be most obvious to a human. As they went under the water, Vela's body changed. Her movements became smooth and graceful, her 4 arms working perfectly together as she led Joe deeper. Her neck gills opened fully. Her body lights got brighter to make up for the less sunlight, and her big eyes adjusted to see clearly underwater. She looked at Joe, expecting to see him uncomfortable or even disgusted at seeing her full alien body in action. Instead, his eyes were wide with wonder. "Vela," his voice came through the talking system, sounding a little strange but full of amazement. "You're incredible underwater. The way you move, it's like watching a dancer." Confused by his reaction, Vela almost forgot to answer. Thank you. This is our natural place to be." "It shows," Joe said, watching the light patterns moving across her skin. "Those body lights, they've changed." "What do they mean?" Vela felt embarrassed. "They're automatic responses mostly, though we can control them somewhat to communicate or make art. Like body language." Joe nodded inside his helmet. "Amazing." They swam deeper until they reached a theater carved into a coral reef, where hundreds of Myraxians had gathered for the Lightverse show. As they took their places, Vela noticed many of her people staring at Joe with open curiosity. "They're not used to seeing humans," she explained quietly. "I understand," Joe replied. "I'm certainly not used to seeing all this. It's beautiful." Before Vela could respond, the show began. The underwater area got darker, and a group of Myraxian poets swam into the center. Their bodies began to glow with complex, controlled patterns, telling stories, showing emotions, and creating visual poetry in 3 dimensions. Beside her, Joe watched with complete attention. Though she knew he couldn't understand all the meanings without explanation, his interest was obvious. Sometimes he would lean closer to her, and she would whisper explanations of important patterns or cultural references. When the show ended and the lights slowly came back, Vela turned to find Joe looking not at the leaving performers but at her. "Thank you," he said simply, "for sharing this with me." "It's part of the exchange program," she replied automatically. Joe shook his head inside the helmet. "No, I mean, for sharing it with me. For explaining the parts I wouldn't have understood. For letting me see your world through your eyes." Something in his voice made Vela's heart beat faster. "You really thought it was beautiful? Our art?" "Not just the art," Joe said quietly. "Everything. Your world, your people, the way you move through water like it's the most natural thing in the universe. Which for you, it is." Vela felt her body lights change to patterns she hadn't shown in a long time, signs of deep emotion and connection. She quickly tried to control them, but it was too late. "Those patterns," Joe said, his eyes following the lights across her skin. "They're different from any I've seen before." "We should go back to the surface," Vela said, suddenly needing space. "There's a party after the show." As they swam upward, Vela's mind raced. Joe's reactions weren't what she had expected. His appreciation seemed real, not just being polite. The way he looked at her underwater wasn't with tolerance but with admiration. Could it be that he truly didn't see her as the cooperative's beauty rules said? That to him, her alien features weren't ugly, but simply different? The thought was both scary and exciting. Back on the surface, they joined a party where both Myraxians and visitors from other planets were gathered. Joe stayed close to Vela as she introduced him to important people from her world. "Your people have been so welcoming," Joe said to an older Myraxian leader. "And your world is even more beautiful than I imagined. We are pleased that you appreciate our humble planet," the elder replied. "Few non-water species truly understand our way of life." "I'm trying," Joe said honestly. "Vela has been an excellent teacher." The elder's eyes shifted to Vela, and his skin lights showed a pattern of approval. She was chosen for her understanding of other cultures. It seems the choice was wise. As they moved through the party, Vela noticed something strange. The way her people looked at her had changed. There was a new respect in their eyes, not just for her job, but for her. Being with a human who clearly valued her culture, who looked at her with admiration rather than pity, had somehow changed how her own people saw her. Later, as the party was ending, Joe and Vela stood on a quiet deck overlooking the ocean. The 3 moons of Myrax cast silver light on the water. "Tomorrow we visit the deep city," Vela said. "You'll need a special pressure suit, but it's worth seeing. Our oldest buildings are there." Joe nodded, but his mind seemed elsewhere. "Vela, can I ask you something?" "Of course. The way you moved underwater today, is that how you would naturally move if you weren't trying to accommodate other species? On the ship you move so carefully." Vela was surprised by his observation. "Yes, on the ship, I try to move in ways that don't make other species uncomfortable. 4 arms can be confusing to watch if you're not used to it." "You shouldn't have to do that," Joe said softly. "You shouldn't have to make yourself smaller or less fluid just to make others comfortable." "It's part of being a good diplomat," Vela said. But Joe's words had touched something deep inside her. "Maybe," Joe said, looking out at the ocean, "but maybe good diplomacy should go both ways. Maybe we should all make an effort to appreciate each other as we truly are, not as we wish others to be." In the moonlight, Vela's skin glowed with a gentle pattern that matched the waves below. For the first time in her life, she didn't try to control it. The final week of Joe's stay on Myrax came too quickly. Tomorrow he would ride a shuttle back to the Starlight Wanderer and start his journey home to Earth. Tonight was the goodbye party at the Myraxian Cultural Center, a beautiful building, built half on land and half underwater so different species could gather together. Vela stood in her room, more nervous than she had been even when they first met. Over the past 3 months, something had changed between her and Joe. Their work relationship had grown into friendship, and maybe something more. At least that's how she felt. Tonight she had put aside her uniform and instead wore formal, Myraxian party clothes, a flowing outfit that sparkled with tiny lights designed to match her natural glow patterns, with all 4 arms left uncovered in the traditional style for important events. When she arrived at the party, she spotted Joe right away. He wore an Earth formal suit, changed slightly to work better in Myraxian air and temperature. He was talking with Captain Zarel and several Myraxian officials, but his eyes found hers across the room almost instantly. The way his face brightened when he saw her sent waves of light patterns across her skin that she didn't even try to hide. She walked over to the group, greeting everyone properly before turning to Joe. "Officer Morgan, I hope you're enjoying the party." "More now," he said with that smile that had become so dear to her. "You look amazing, cultural representative. That traditional outfit really makes your light patterns stand out." Coming from anyone else, Vela might have thought they were making fun of her or just being polite. From Joe, she had learned to recognize when he meant what he said. "Thank you," she said simply. "Would you like to see the underwater part of the party? There's a traditional dance show starting soon." "I wouldn't miss it," Joe replied, motioning for her to lead the way. As they walked toward the underwater viewing area, Vela noticed the Arcturians from the ship watching them with obvious interest. She stood taller automatically. "Those are the same Arcturians from the ship, aren't they?" Joe asked quietly. "Yes," Vela confirmed, surprised he remembered. "They're part of the bigger diplomatic mission." Joe's face hardened slightly. "I've been wanting to ask you something about that day, about what you said about beauty standards in the cooperative." Vela felt her body lights dim with worry. "This doesn't seem like the right time." "Actually, I think it's exactly the right time," Joe interrupted gently. "Before I leave, I need you to understand something important." They had reached a quiet corner of the hall, near the clear wall that looked into the underwater performance area. Beautiful Myraxian dancers were already gathering, their body lights creating early patterns in the water. "What is it?" Vela asked, all 4 hands clasped together nervously. "When I first met you," Joe began, "I was immediately struck by how unique you are. 4 arms, blue skin with those amazing light patterns, those eyes that seem to see everything. I thought you were extraordinary." Vela felt her body lights pulse with confusion. Extraordinary isn't the same as beautiful. "Isn't it?" Joe challenged. "On Earth we have a saying, beauty is in the eye of the beholder. What one person finds beautiful, another might not. There's no objective standard." "The cooperative has established rules," Vela began. "And they're wrong," Joe stated firmly. "At least from a human perspective. We learned centuries ago that trying to create objective beauty standards usually just reflects power structures and prejudice, not any universal truth." Vela was silent, thinking about his words.
"When I saw you underwater," Joe continued, his voice softening, "watching you move so gracefully, seeing your body lights create patterns more complex than any human art. Vela, you were the most beautiful being I'd ever seen." Her body lights
Flared with strong emotion. "You can't mean that." "I absolutely do," Joe insisted. "And it's not just physical. Your intelligence, your patience explaining your culture, your subtle humor that took me weeks to fully appreciate. All of it. I find you beautiful, Vela. Not despite your differences from humans, but because of your complete, perfect, Myraxian self." Tears, a response Myraxians shared with humans, filled Vela's compound eyes. "I don't know what to say." Joe smiled gently. "You don't have to say anything. I just couldn't leave without making sure you knew that this human at least thinks the cooperative's beauty rules are completely wrong about Myraxians." Behind them, the underwater performance had begun. Myraxian dancers creating spectacular patterns with their movements and body lights. Neither Vela nor Joe turned to watch. In my culture, Vela said finally, words like that would mean something serious. They mean something serious in my culture too, Joe replied, his eyes never leaving hers. I'm assigned to Earth next, Vela admitted. As a cultural worker, I was going to tell you tomorrow. Joe's face lit up with real joy. Then this isn't goodbye. No, Vela agreed, her body lights creating patterns of happiness so bright they reflected off the nearby surfaces. It's not goodbye at all. As they turned together to watch the underwater performance, Vela felt something important change inside her. All her life she had accepted the cooperative standards, felt herself lacking when compared to species like humans or Arcturians. But now, seeing herself reflected in Joe's eyes, not as something alien or less, but as something uniquely beautiful, she began to question those standards completely. Maybe beauty truly was in the eye of the beholder. Maybe there was no objective rule that could measure it. And maybe, in finding someone who saw beauty where she had always seen flaws, Vela had discovered a truth more universal than any beauty standard, that connection goes beyond differences, and that seeing yourself through loving eyes can change everything. The Arcturians approached them, their silver skin gleaming in the soft lights of the reception hall. Officer Morgan, the taller one said, we understand this is your final evening on Myrax. We hope your experience has been educational. More than educational, Joe replied, his voice polite but firm. It's been transformative. The Myraxian culture is one of the most beautiful I've encountered in my travels. The Arcturian's expression was hard to read. An interesting perspective. And you, cultural representative Vela, will you be returning to ship duty after this assignment? Vela stood tall, all forearms relaxed at her sides rather than tucked close as she usually kept them around other species. Actually, I've been assigned to Earth as part of our extended cultural exchange. I'll be working directly with human officials to strengthen our relationship. Indeed. The Arcturian looked surprised. That's quite an honor. Yes, Vela agreed, her body lights showing a pattern of pride she would have hidden before. It is. After the Arcturians left, Joe gently touched one of Vela's hands. Ready to watch the dance? She nodded, and they moved closer to the clear wall. As the dancers spun and twisted underwater, their body lights creating stories in the depths, Joe leaned close to Vela. In 6 months, when my Earth assignment ends, I've requested a position as liaison to Myrax, he whispered. I thought we could take turns visiting each other's worlds. Vela turned to him, her body lights shifting to a pattern so rare among her people that it had no direct translation in human languages. The visual expression of hope becoming certainty, of fear changing into trust, of feeling beautiful at last, just as she was. I would like that, she said simply. And as Joe's hand held hers, she realized that sometimes understanding came not from explanation or argument, but from a single moment of true seeing, of one being recognizing the beauty in another, across the vast differences of biology, culture, and stars.